Thanks very much. Sorry, excuse, I'm slightly lost my voice, so excuse it's a bit croaky. So I'm here on behalf of the Cancer and Nutrition NIHR Infrastructure Collaboration, which is hosted by the Southampton BRC, to give a pitch about nutrition and cancer. So the background to my pitch is that nutritional factors, including obesity and physical activity, are responsible for between a quarter and a third of incident cancers in the UK. Nutritional support in its wider sense is important in the management of patients with cancer. There's currently only limited interaction between the two disciplines, so a lack of sharing information, knowledge and expertise. There is no coherent research agenda in the UK for cancer and nutrition. And there is a clear need for a coordinated framework for future research. So NIHR commissioned the Southampton BRC to explore this issue, and I'm going to pitch something to the Dragons, hopefully to fund this proposal. So just a quick bit more of background. We have just completed in the spring the first phase of our initiative, which was a mapping of all major cancer and nutrition research grants in the UK from the previous 5 years. We conducted a patient experience survey and a clinician survey to find out where the gaps were in terms of nutritional care during the cancer process. And there are some long-term goals of the infrastructure collaboration. So, what do we want to do? We want to enable consumers to generate nutritional research priorities because we believe that it's consumers who ultimately will benefit from improved research. Patients want and need reliable nutritional advice throughout the cancer process. And at present, there is a lack of evidence on nutrition in cancer, which leaves patients and professionals feeling lost about diets, supplements, managing side effects, physical activity, and that's just to name a few key examples. As a result, many patients and professionals resort to web-based information of doubtful accuracy and quality. So what can we do about this? We've got two ideas within this pitch. So our first proposal is to build an online, structured and quality-assured information collection system where consumers submit their nutritional questions and concerns, and it can be to do with any stage of the cancer process and for any cancer site, in order to determine the research priorities. So we will establish working groups to answer the key questions submitted by patients, the ones which we receive the most comments and queries and questions on, to provide guidance where the evidence exists by conducting literature reviews. And where there is insufficient evidence, working groups should make recommendations for future nutritional research. Our second objective is then to develop a quality-assured web-based portal for patients, carers and health professionals, and develop an e-learning training package. So once we've established ourselves as a reliable source of nutritional information, where patients, carers and professionals feel they can trust the information that we provide, we will aim to develop guidance where sufficient robust evidence exists and share this through our website with dedicated sections for each grouping, so for patients and carers, for professionals and researchers. And we want to present tailored messages to each audience because we're aware that not everybody's needs are the same. So, for example, toolkits for nutritional assessment for health professionals, how to deal with side effects for carers and patients, supplement use for patients, and those particular examples I present because those were actually real examples that we found from the answers from our two surveys that we conducted. And then the final thing is to develop an open access e-learning training package for professionals on the nutritional management of cancer. And that would have what we want to do is give clinicians the tools to routinely assess nutritional status during the cancer process. And that training package could have different levels. So a very, very basic level for primary healthcare professionals. So that would just potentially just include BMI and the training package, the training needed for that, up to much more detailed and comprehensive nutritional assessments, which would include metabolic markers and things like that. And just as a pitch, there's our the website of our initiative. If anyone is interested for more information or wants to get involved, please feel free to get in contact. Thank you.
You've finished that under time. So I'm now going to reset the clock because we're going to have 5 minutes worth of questions for you from the Dragons. So it's a free-for-all, so you're going to have to fight amongst yourselves to get the questions in. Need the microphone, though.
Brilliant. I think it sounds really nice, actually, but I'm not allowed to be nice, am I? Because I'm a Dragon, so sorry. It sounds... okay, so I want to know the scale, because you want a lot of money from us to do this. So I want to know the scale of what you're undertaking. It sounds great, but you haven't put any numbers in there.
No.
So your online collection system, so idea number one, the first stage, how many people are you going to be gathering data from? How many people? How are you going to process the data to assess your priorities? And have you got any idea of how many priority questions you're likely to end up identifying you can cope with as a team? And how are you going to go about actually then collecting the information? And if you find that none of those, and if you find that, if you find that none of those questions are answerable with evidence, how are you going to go about setting up studies to move on to the second part of your study, which is pretty hard?
I'm going to have to ask the other Dragons to limit to one.
Sorry.
Can I answer all those questions before I forget them? Shall I answer those questions first? Yeah. So the first, if I can remember, I probably will forget some of those questions. The first one is to develop the web portal, which is open access, so anybody can submit questions, and we will hope to sort of spread the information through patient networks, through CSGs, through cancer charities, and we already have a network of stakeholders identified through the initiative, which we've sort of been working with. So we will hope for as many questions as possible. How many questions do we hope to answer? Let's say for the beginning, 10 key questions. What was the next question?
Well, it was about dealing with evidence lapse, because most of these questions won't be answerable with good quality evidence. So how are you going to go about that?
Right, yes. Then we plan to establish working groups. So potentially within those 10 questions, there might be some that you could group together. So either according to stages, so prevention, secondary prevention, treatment, or potentially through cancer sites. So perhaps in the same sort of way as the CSGs, group them into themes and sub-themes, and then develop specific working groups, hopefully, to address those questions.
Thank you.
John, your question.
Okay, it sounds very broad, so I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. What do you think is the key priority?
Good question. Well, I would say from the answers that we had from our patient survey, the biggest priorities are in terms of dealing with side effects, nutritional side effects, through the cancer process. So I'd say that's something where we've noticed that there's a lack of evidence and a lack of guidance. So that would probably be, I would imagine that the sorts of questions that we would receive would relate to that area, and that would be something to prioritise.
Joe? Oh, okay.
So the process you've just described to define what the top 10 priorities are describes sort of the James Lind processes. Why are you duplicating one, or is it that and you've just not said that it's a JNA process?
That's another very good question. When we started this work and we developed our protocol for the mapping exercise that we conducted, we actually consulted the James Lind Alliance and looked to see whether that would be a useful process, and we realised that what we're doing is something that's very similar to that. So we decided to carry on with what we were doing, but we've kind of borrowed some of their techniques and we're using it as in a much broader way to try and answer this very broad, big question.
So likewise, I think it's a great idea, and £1 million is a lot of money, so how are you going to show us that it works?
That's another good question. How are we going to show you it works? Well, what we really want to do in this initiative is, at the end, is translational research. That's what NIHR focuses on. So come up with some key recommendations, say for top 5 priorities for translational research. And also, we'd like to be able to include on this portal some very specific, reliable, evidence-based guidance and information for patients so that they feel that they've got the confidence to manage their nutritional intake throughout cancer and beyond.
You know that you've achieved that they feel confident to manage their...
I mean, that can be a whole next kind of research process of more patient surveys. What we thought we could do is all the people that submit questions, we can then ask them to become part of a wider community where we can then go back to them and ask them to help us. So it's a sort of a two-way research process.
So that's kind of a research to generate more research ideas. So you'll be coming back for another 1 million.
That's
very
what we're
shortly.
about, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Do you want to pin
There's one more
Arabella
question,
down?
which is how much money do you actually want? 'Cause
Well-
I'm sure you don't want the whole million, do you? So how much do you actually want to do this work?
My estimate was that we would ask for 550,000, which is based on, as a 3-year project, as a starting point, to have a research associate and 2 senior researchers. Then we would have about £100,000 for the sort of, so that would be £450,000, and then over 3 years, and then £100,000 for the technical support of making a kind of a professional looking website that people would trust, developing the e-learning package and the sort of technical side of things.
She's done the costings all right. Okay, you can't falter on that. Thank you very much, Arabella.